Wah! As soon as they entered the border guard, cheers assaulted their ears. Their entire bodies tingled with the vibrations. Everyone came out and screamed, so of course it was overwhelming.
My ears are going to burst.
Amidst the tired soldiers, people shouted in excitement as snow fell around them. The Black Blade bandits had threatened them, and the cultists had gathered. Officially, it was the Viscount Tarnin's army, but it was no different from dressing ghouls in human clothing. It was an obvious trick. Everyone who needed to know, knew. Even the innkeeper was aware. Though Aspen still remained, there were moments that could not be passed over. When is the most precious moment in life? It's when you've overcome a threat, when you've escaped danger, when you truly feel alive. That was how the people of the border guard were feeling right now. They had all escaped the danger and overcome the threat. Some had fled in the dead of night, unable to bear it. Others had run away early, unable to endure. On the other hand, those who stayed in the city remained. They didn't hold back their voices. Their hearts were pounding as they shouted.
I'll give you something I've kept for 20 years.
Vanessa, the innkeeper, shouted. Vanessa, who had lost her first husband at the age of 25 and had not met any man since, had guarded her body carefully. Whenever someone tried to make a move, she would swing a cast-iron pot.
Who would want that?
Next to her, a burly mercenary shouted. His face, wrapped in bandages from his left eye to his chin, was stained red, presumably from an injury sustained in battle. He didn't seem to be in any pain as he shouted and laughed heartily, even though his wound would surely tear open.
She wasn't talking to you. Get a grip, innkeeper.
Everyone laughed. The mercenary continued to shout with a booming voice.
They fought like demons, fought like hell.
The rough voices of men responded to the mercenary's lead, and in between, the screams of women, half cheers, half shrieks, joined the chorus. They were all drunk with the joy of victory.
Oh, have you all forgotten that Aspen is still out there? Is this really the time for this?
Kreis grumbled. Seeing this, Rem patted the back of Kreis' head. His eagerness to comfort him made his hand land on the back of Kreis' head a bit too fast. Kreis rubbed the back of his head with his hand, turning his head slightly, and Rem chuckled as he spoke.
You've got to enjoy it when you can, man.
Are we going to enjoy ourselves even before we die?
Look at you, you're enjoying yourself now. I was just about to split your head into 6 pieces with my axe.
Enough.
Enkrid intervened. If he hadn't, Kreis would have gotten hit a few more times, even if his head wouldn't have actually been split open.
Oppressing the weak just because you're strong is not a good habit,
Ragna added after observing the situation. By some coincidence, the group around Enkrid had split into 2. On the left were the wounded, and on the right were those who were still intact. So, on the left were Rem, Auden, and Teresa. On the right were Ragna, Jackson, and Dunbachel.
Huh? What was that? Can't hear a thing from a fool who keeps getting lost.
Rem cupped his hand behind his ear, and this time Jackson replied.
Oppressing the weak, bad habit, don't do it.
Jackson added a gesture with his words, his hand moving side to side as if explaining to a pet. Whether people cheered or not, or called him the immortal Rem or not, Rem pulled out his axe.
Care to come closer and say that?
No, wait, stop, don't.
Jackson continued his gestures, crossing his hands. This is going to explode if left alone. Seeing this, Ragna added more words. It was like pouring dozens of barrels of oil onto an already raging fire.
whether it's a guy with a broken arm from a dog or someone barely alive.
Ragna's tone didn't seem particularly provocative. This was Ragna's strength and weakness. The strength was that he always spoke sincerely, and the weakness was that he didn't bother to hide it. Of course, at this moment it was a weakness.
Haha, brother. Are you ready for eternal rest?
Auden didn't snap back. He simply moved quietly. Ragna truly believed they were weaklings. Enkrid heard the entire conversation. If left unchecked, there would probably be bloodshed before they even made it inside to receive their cheers. Everyone was quietly building up their energy. It had been a while. Come to think of it, they had managed to get along fairly well so far. In a way, this was quite a bit of progress. At least they weren't splitting into teams to fight this time. Rem and Auden on one side, Ragna and Jackson on the other. Then again, looking at it this way, it seemed even more chaotic.
Aren't you gonna stop them?
Even Kreis, who usually had a good sense of things, was feeling uneasy as he subtly poked Enkrid's side. Enkrid was now something of an expert at calming them down. A single word was enough.
I think I'm faster now, Rem.
The heated atmosphere cooled slightly. What did he just say? Rem asked again.
What did you just say?
Check later.
The tense atmosphere dissolved. Enkrid's eyes turned to the horse leading the way ahead. The panther that had gone ahead was uninjured but looked tired. The wild horse with odd-colored eyes was busy observing its surroundings, walking confidently without needing anyone to hold its reins. Despite the crowd of people, it remained calm. Though horses tend to be skittish, this one remained composed, perhaps thanks to its bloodline, having endured the blood of beasts. It was confident. Its attitude showed that it trusted its own abilities and knew it could escape if needed. Having seen it charge into battle, it seemed trustworthy enough.
This one's a part of the unit, too.
Enkrid silently acknowledged. Leaving the cheers behind, they entered the city, and Rem faced Enkrid.
Da-da-da, da-da-da. Time to check. Let's see who's faster. Are you feeling okay?
Enkrid asked with genuine concern, though not intending it as a provocation.
Shit.
Rem responded, stretching his lips sideways in a display of mock irritation, expressing his displeasure through his face. It was a masterful expression. His face was bizarre, but the conversation was calm and friendly.
Let's see. It won't be fun if I'm faster than you.
Ah, what an interesting guy. Enkrid got into position. Everyone watched from in front of the barracks as he repeated the steps he had learned. He still couldn't do it all in one breath and was clumsy in channeling his will into it, but once he managed to focus, he was faster than Lycanos. It was similar to Will of Refusal. The technique was unpolished, but once it was triggered, it was overwhelming. Relax, contract, explode. Repeating the same process as before, he thrust his sword forward. The sword shot out in a straight line, folding space and cutting through the air. Rem tried to deflect the sword with his axe, but failed. In the end, he had no choice but to block the sword with the flat of his axe. The result was the sound of clashing metal.
Nice block.
Enkrid said, impressed inwardly. He hadn't aimed to take Rem's life, but the speed wasn't something easy to block.
What have you been doing while I was gone?
Rem didn't hide his surprise, and it wasn't just Rem. Ragna let out a short cough. Jackson, who had half closed his eyes, suddenly opened them wide. Audin, who had been smiling, froze in place. He looked like a well-crafted statue. Ragna, having seen this once before, was somewhat calm, but seeing it once didn't mean he was used to it. In fact, this just proved that killing Lycanos wasn't a coincidence. His surprise was no different from the others. 2 words crossed Ragna's mind.
He's fast.
Even now, he was fast. Speed is relative. With that in mind, how many people could actually block that thrust? Maybe 3. The barbarian, the bear-worshipping priest, or the wildcat. The beastkin or Teresa wouldn't be able to. Ah, well, Teresa could if she took up a shield seriously. But the beastkin couldn't, not because there was a vast difference in skill, but because of the difference in fighting styles. Other weaknesses were apparent as well.
But there's too much downtime after that single thrust.
While the initial burst of speed was remarkable.
Let's try sticking to the landing next time, huh?
Rem was right. The attack hadn't landed properly. His arm was trembling, his stance slightly collapsing, and his balance was off. Still, that didn't take away from the impact of the strike.
A thrust focused purely on speed.
In other words, Enkrid's thrust was at a level that a seasoned knight might exhibit. If he hadn't realized fragments of the will, such a skill beyond the limit wouldn't have been possible.
The will of refusal and the thrust.
2 fragments of the will. It was curious but not impossible. Yet this was the first time anyone had seen a human like this. If he were a regular person, he wouldn't have stayed by Enkrid's side until now.
Let's do it.
Enkrid remained calm. As the snow poured down around them, everyone retreated into their own worlds. Everyone here was the same. Watching Enkrid brought an unstoppable flood of stimulation.
Father.
Audin whispered in prayer, while Dunbachel's eyes burned with excitement. Teresa, forgetting her injuries, was itching for a fight, and Kreis, who had been observing it all, finally spoke up.
Are you serious? You're gonna spar in a moment like this?
Then what, you want to clear the snow?
Rem shot back. Kreis sighed, steadied his breathing, and turned his eyes to Enkrid.
Commander, one last question.
Ask.
We gonna bite them.
When Dunbachel spouted nonsense from the side, Rem kicked her in the rear.
Didn't I beat you enough already?
Why is it always me?
Why do you think?
Leaving those two behind, Kreis continued.
We're going to fight, right?
That question carried a lot of weight. They could run away now if they wanted. Abandoning the Green Pearl would make defending the border guard a trivial task. They had passed one major hurdle already, and the Martai forces could be mobilized. Though they couldn't easily withdraw because of the cultist disturbances, by now reinforcements should be on their way. They'd probably arrive by tomorrow. Even so, would they still step forward to fight?
What if we leave it?
Enkrid asked in return.
Whew, I know you know the answer, but I'll say it anyway. If we leave it, it'll be hard to protect this city.
That was Kreis' assessment. Things were chaotic within Norillia. If they weren't, the reinforcements should have arrived long ago. At the very least, Count Molson shouldn't have been able to ignore them like this.
The Central Forces can't reach this far.
And then Battalion Commander Marcus withdrew. There were no signs of this being good, no matter how you looked at it. The conclusion was the same. If they wanted to survive and protect what they had to strike first. The advantage of the terrain and the timing was in their favor now. They had to act before it was too late.
What do you think the Aspen lot are doing over there?
Enkrid asked after sheathing his sword and glancing at the snowstorm. The snow had grown heavier. If it kept up like this, the area would turn into a winter wonderland. This wasn't great news for the soldiers. Battle fatigue aside, the snow had to be cleared before anything else. If left unattended, the drains would freeze, and the accumulation of snow could collapse the roofs of the hastily built wooden structures. The barracks were stone, so they were safe, but the fences would need more repairs if they broke, so clearing the snow was the right thing to do. As Kreis thought about the problems caused by the falling snow, he also pondered why Aspen was waiting and what they could possibly want. His conclusion was anticlimactic.
I don't know. If they wanted the Green Pearl, they should have attacked by now, but it seems like we need to watch them a little longer.
There were ominous predictions, but all of them seemed unlikely.
We should move once the snow stops.
Kreis finished speaking. Enkrid nodded. What else was there to do now? Rest. They ate and slept. But as the snow continued to fall until evening, grumbling spread among the soldiers.
Can we just have a drink and enjoy ourselves? Damn this snow.
Kreis dismissed it as complaining by people who had too much time on their hands. They were only able to rest because of the snow. Meanwhile, those who wanted to drink and relax had already done so. Instead of drinking, Enkrid reflected on what they had gained. He replayed the battle in his mind, going over everything that had happened. Had he missed anything? Was there something to learn? When you go over things like that, there's always something to be learned. After spending a day thinking and resting, the next day he slowly began to loosen up his body.
Bala.
Sinar approached and tossed him some ointment made by fairies. He didn't know the exact composition, but it was a good remedy. After applying it, his minor wounds healed quickly. It was especially effective for the burns on his back.
Let me apply it for you.
The ferry company commander personally spread the ointment on his back. A sharp pain mixed with a cool sensation spread across his back. Thanks to the isolation technique, his body's natural healing ability had been activated, speeding up the recovery. The regeneration ability, his body healed quickly, even when broken.
Give me a few more, there are many injured.
At Enkrid's request, Sinar glanced around and replied.
They'll heal if they just spit on it.
With that, the ferry company commander left swiftly. It seemed like Rem was more seriously injured than he was.
This is discrimination, I tell you. Why is the captain getting all the special treatment?
You're not seriously asking that, are you?
Dunbachel spoke with utmost seriousness.
I don't know, I really don't. So let's train. Beastkin, let's have some fun.
As Rem growled, Dunbachel swiftly darted out of the barracks. Her agility was impressive. With a quick kick off the ground, she leaped out the door like a white shadow. Her skill had clearly improved. It was obvious. In front of the barracks, between the falling snowflakes, Dunbachel stuck her tongue out.
What's she saying?
Though her voice reached Rem, he didn't chase after her. His heated leather had become worn and patched, and he had turned it into a vest. Wearing that vest, Rem thought. It was snowing and it was cold. Should he go out and slit that beastkin's throat or not? Chasing after a beastkin sticking out her tongue would be easy, and as for the wounds, they could fester for all he cared.
Hold back, brother.
At Audin's gentle persuasion, Rem snorted and lay down. She'll come back someday, and when she does, that's when he'll beat her. The fact that she didn't get hurt meant she still had the habit of dodging while fighting. That meant it was time to reteach her how to fight. It was the duty of the person in charge of training. Rem vowed inwardly. He would definitely give her a good beating. With one of his arms broken, Auden checked the wound on Enkrid's shin.
It'll heal quickly.
Ironically, Auden's own arm didn't seem like it would heal quickly at all. Even in this situation, divine power was not being used. There must have been a reason, though Enkrid didn't ask. Enkrid gave a brief nod and went outside, planning to warm up his body. There were a few mercenaries who had fought for the city, so he intended to meet them. The snowfall had eased slightly. A few soldiers recognized Enkrid and stiffened, offering sharp salutes. Given what he had shown on the battlefield, their behavior made sense. For now, it was limited to the battlefield, but there he had undoubtedly stood out. As he walked around the camp, he noticed a woman standing at the entrance to the barracks, her nose red from the cold. When Enkrid approached, the woman looked up.
Ah,
She seemed to recognize him. She approached, knelt, and bowed her head.
no matter how lowly I may be, I was taught never to ignore the kindness I've received.
The woman spoke, appearing to be over 40.
Thank you for saving my son.
She wept as she thanked him. Everyone had told her to give up, yet he had saved the boy. Her child, to her, Enkrid was a god. He was salvation. He was grace. He was everything. That boy was someone she would trade her life for. Enkrid felt a strange sense of elation. His heart trembled. It was as if someone was whispering in his ear.
You were not wrong.
It sounded like the voice of Gare and Pete, who had died.
I support your dream, mister.
The child's voice overlapped as well. He wanted to end the war on the continent. Enkrid wanted to become a knight and bring about that end with his own hands. He had wanted to become a knight to prevent any more mothers from losing their children to war. He helped the woman stand and sent her back calmly. His fight, his dream, was only beginning. In the journey ahead, he had merely reached the starting line. No, he hadn't even reached the starting point yet. He would become a knight. That worn and tattered dream had now been mended with light and was standing right before his eyes.
Not good.
That was the answer that came to the question of whether he was okay. Graham, lying in bed, only lifted his head to look at Enkrid. Graham had been stabbed in the back so severely that he couldn't move properly. In other words, the Border Guard Reserve Unit had lost its commander. The thought of fighting a battle without their lord, battalion commander, and overall commander.
You'll be fine without me,
Graham said. The adjutant nearly nodded in agreement. No, there were two adjutants, and one of them did nod.
That bastard's nodding.
No, sir.
As soon as Graham spoke, the adjutant quickly switched from nodding to shaking his head in denial. Watching this farce, Enkrid asked,
So do I take over? Who else would?
Graham suddenly realized something.
I'm only the lord in name.
Wasn't the real hero of this city someone else? He himself wasn't exactly ordinary either, having killed the enemy commander and commanded a band of madmen in this battle, but he was also the kind of man who would save a child. Throwing himself into danger to save a child in that moment.
A useless act, but
That's the kind of man people could trust, and because he was that kind of person, there were no complaints. At this moment,
why don't you just give up the lordship?
even if Enkrid said something like that, Graham would gladly hand it over. Of course, the man wouldn't say that. It was just a hallucination. Even though he was a lord in name, it didn't feel good. It was a strange feeling. He didn't harbor any jealousy toward the man in front of him, maybe because he'd seen him rise from the bottom, or perhaps because he knew this man swung his sword until his palms bled. Even now, despite his vastly improved skills compared to before, this man continued to abuse his hands in the same way. To be jealous of such a man would be to admit that he himself was nothing but trash and a fool. Perhaps that was why.
I don't want to be trash.
That was the conclusion Graham came to. Still, he had one thing he was curious about, so he asked.
Why did you save that child?
It had been dangerous, pointless. Amidst the flashes and explosions, he could have died if he let his guard down for even a second. And yet the man in front of him rolled while holding the child. He saved the child, even while suffering burns on his back and shoulders. Why? It was just a kid who would have naturally died if left alone or struck by a single arrow. Not all the actions taken in that moment made sense, but the conclusion was that he saved the child. He swung his sword for someone unrelated to him, like a character from a story. Enkrid replied without any hesitation.
Because I wanted to.
The attitude of acting like it was no big deal left an even deeper impression. This guy really is a complete lunatic, no doubt about it. Graham decided to pick a fight for no reason.
Answer respectfully to your battalion commander, company commander. Have you been influenced by Rem?
That's an insult. Are you challenging me to a duel?
Rem was a mistake.
Yes, sir.
Win and come back. When you return, I'll personally lead the welcome for you this time.
Should I be happy that an old man, not a beautiful woman, is welcoming me?
He seemed genuinely curious as he asked, and the idiot adjutant nodded again. Why the hell is he agreeing to that?
Get out.
Graham kicked both Enkrid and the adjutant out. As a lord, he worried about the city. Enkrid saw a sense of responsibility in Graham. He liked that thus.
I'll win and come back.
As he was leaving, Enkrid spoke. Graham didn't say much in response. There was no trace of worry in his eyes. Outside, the snow was easing. They couldn't wait too long for Aspen to just sit back and watch. They would have to move soon. As reinforcements for Green Pearl, that is.
I wish you could read the room, don't you?
The clueless adjutant was rather dense. He didn't realize that the snowfall had given them a brief respite. How did this guy become an adjutant?
You need to sharpen your sense of the situation.
Enkrid offered some pointed advice before turning away. He saw the child's mother and a group of wounded mercenaries in the city. The mercenaries were staying at an inn in the city. Some had promised to join the army, while others remained as mercenaries. There were quite a few interesting people among them. One of them was Edin Molson.
Be wary of my father.
He said it out of nowhere.
Do you realize that means I should be wary of you right now?
It's advice, not a warning.
Understood.
Enkrid brushed it off lightly. Was Count Molson really the most important thing right now? No, the order of things was clear. The current threat was Aspen. Aspen, who was determined to strike.
Don't forget my words.
When Edin Molson repeated himself, Enkrid replied cheerfully.
By the way, what was your name again?
Did you forget again?
Before Edin could explode in frustration, Enkrid quickly walked back to the camp.
Got anything to eat? Food? Don't you know injured people need to eat well?
As soon as Enkrid entered the tent, Rem greeted him, looking like a hungry baby bird waiting for its mother. He was annoyingly obsessed with food. It just so happened that Enkrid had finished a round through the town. It was partly for recovery, and partly to check on the mercenaries who had stayed behind to fight. So he had brought back bread, marmalade, and some spiced jerky in his hands.
I heard people say that if you die after eating, at least you die with a good complexion.
That's a Western joke. How do you know that?
Rem chuckled and shoved the bread into his mouth. Watching him, Enkrid thought of Gilpin, whom he had met just before returning from the market. There was something off about him.
A number of spies have entered the city, and we've missed a few.
That's what Gilpin said as he approached.
We'll conduct a more thorough watch.
His clenched jaw showed a firm resolve. Enkrid didn't reply. He only wondered why they were the ones dealing with spies. Wasn't that the city guard's job? Or maybe not. No, that seemed right. Anyway, Gilpin was clearly determined. He showed passion and enthusiasm as if this was his personal calling, like he had been summoned by some divine power. Though in truth, it all probably started with Kry's orders, so it had nothing to do with any divine calling.
Oh, right. Maelrun is going after every decent sword wielder he comes across. We're increasing our guild members, planning to take full control of the city's knight.
Enkrid wasn't aware of this, but Gilpin had seen the battlefield. He had watched the battle closely, particularly keeping an eye on Enkrid. Gilpin had always known Enkrid was an extraordinary person, but something was different this time. He stood at the front, facing the enemy blades. He confronted and fought the enemy commander. That was remarkable in itself, but what had left the deepest impression on Gilpin was the moment when Enkrid rolled on the ground, protecting a child in his arms. The memory of that scene lingered in Gilpin's mind for days.
Did he have a reason to save the child?
No, and yet he saved them. The fact that the child was kidnapped was his own mistake. He had vowed to root out the spies and protect the city's knight, even with the help of Maelrun, that frog. But still he had failed. That day, Gilpin clenched his teeth so hard that his gums bled. 100 years ago, there was a man who unified the Thieves' Guild alone. He wasn't just a thief, he was a righteous outlaw. He made it his life's mission to help the poor and the struggling. He had only seen and learned the ways of thievery since childhood, and so he rose to the top of that world, the continent's only rogue master, a bard who sang of the romance of the night, the emperor of the alleyways, Cucellus. As a child, Gilpin's dream was to become a guardian of the night. The concept of the night's guardian was created by Cucellus, a protector who would sing the song of peace by safeguarding the night, watching the laughter of those around him. Gilpin thought that he was becoming someone different from a mere thief. He believed and acted as if he was contributing to the protection of the city where he was born and raised.
This is my city, the place where I was born and grew up.
He had to protect it. If not him, then who else would? He had failed to save the child. He had missed a few spies. No one blamed Gilpin. Even the child's mother wouldn't hold him accountable, but Gilpin blamed himself.
This is my fault.
He didn't mind if people mocked him, calling him an incompetent thief, talking about duty.
If this is just a dream.
Gilpin wanted to hold onto his childhood dream once more and move forward. And just before that dream was shattered, Enkrid saved the child. He saw the gratitude in the mother's eyes. That's when Gilpin recognized the extraordinary nature of the man before him. It wasn't about his sword skills. Was this how Cucellus had been? Enkrid had a different heart, a different will. Gilpin could see that.
Why did he do it?
When he asked Chryse, the answer he got was nothing short of a masterpiece.
Probably because it pissed him off. The enemy commander was doing something stupid, and saving the child would have really gotten under his skin.
Was that really the reason? No, he saved a life, and in doing so, he protected the city. What Enkrid had done wasn't intentional, but it completely won over the heart of an old thief. Gilpin resolved once more.
Even if it costs my life.
He would protect the city's night, and he would gladly play the role of clearing the small obstacles in the path of this man. Even though Chryse had paid attention to Gilpin and recruited him, in the end, Gilpin pledged his loyalty to someone else, and even when Chryse later came to know all of Gilpin's intentions and thoughts, nothing changed. He had a do-what-you-will attitude. He was indifferent. As long as the job was done, that's what mattered. In fact, Chryse was only grateful for the heads-up. It meant Gilpin wouldn't stab him in the back when things went south. Of course, Enkrid knew nothing of this. He simply enjoyed watching someone show such passion and dedication.
I'll cheer you on. I'll make sure to clear even the smallest stones from your path.
He couldn't fully understand the words that followed, but he took it as meaning that Gilpin intended to clean up the alleyways of the city. For just a short visit to the city, Enkrid had encountered quite a few people and events. He had even checked in on Graham on the way back. When his brief thoughts ended and he turned his gaze, he saw Dunbotchel with a swollen cheekbone. It was obvious that she'd been beaten up.
If the snow stops, we're heading into battle. Why are you turning him into a wreck?
Enkrid scolded him. Dunbotchel was a valuable asset for the fight ahead.
She'll be fine in half a day. Do I look like someone who'd just beat a kid without thinking?
Enkrid almost nodded, but managed to stop himself. He couldn't act like the clueless adjutant from earlier.
Your jaw looks a bit out of place right now.
Maybe I hurt my eyes too.
Ignoring the comment, Enkrid walked past. Ahead he saw Chryse, who had spent the night resting for his skincare, sitting stupidly by the fire. At first glance, he looked like he was relaxing, but Enkrid knew better. Chryse was deep in thought, strategizing. At least that's what Enkrid believed as he watched. Slurp. Chryse, who had been drooling, quickly wiped his mouth.
Oh, I dozed off.
He really was just lounging around. Enkrid considered going over and smacking him on the back of the head. Just as he was thinking that, Chryse stretched and got up.
You're here?
Yeah.
I've been thinking.
Oh, you've been thinking?
Maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to hit him the moment something useless came out of his mouth. Unaware of Enkrid's thoughts, Chryse continued in his usual tone.
The Aspen guys must have set a trap.
The heavy snowfall had started to lighten, and in that time Chryse had been deep in thought.
If they had attacked from behind.
It would have been a tough fight, but at least it was the kind of battle they had anticipated. Aspen should have taken advantage of their position and attacked with everything they had. But they hadn't. Winter battles were already difficult, so why were they dragging it out? Aspen wasn't attacking but waiting. Even with the snow letting up, there had been no ambush. Only now were they beginning to prepare to move their troops. It was almost as if they were waiting for the battle on this side to finish first. That was suspicious. It felt wrong, very, very wrong. A rising sense of anxiety returned.
If it were me, I would have attacked.
What fight is easier than striking your opponent's back? And yet Aspen didn't do that. Something's up, something unpredictable. This could be the worst-case scenario. After going over his thoughts repeatedly, Kreis reached a conclusion.
It's going to be tougher than facing the Black Blade Bandits and the cultists combined. Who knows, they might even have a knight hidden somewhere. Even if they bring out knight-level forces, we don't know if we'll get any knight-level support on our side. They might even redirect some of their forces to target the city directly.
What exactly are you trying to say?
They're capable of anything.
And our response?
Enkrid asked, and Kreis answered. Although their tone was calm and ordinary, with the fire crackling between them, the conversation was no different from that between a commanding officer and his subordinate troops before battle. Why wouldn't it be? Graham had been taken down by an assassin and was now bedridden, having handed over full authority to Enkrid. The fire's glow cast a reddish hue over Kreis' face.
Do you know the battalion commander stationed with Green Pearl?
Enkrid shook his head. He had never met the man. All he had heard from various sources was that he was an opportunist, someone willing to do anything for personal gain. He was said to be excellent in logistics and fortifications, but combat was not his strong suit. None of this was good news.
In the worst-case scenario, we could be facing a situation where the enemy's numbers suddenly double, as if by magic.
At the mention of magic, Esther, standing nearby, scoffed. Today, she was in human form. As they spoke, the snow had completely stopped. With the snow gone, it was time to reorganize their lines and march out. His body was halfway recovered. With Graham out of commission, Enkrid would now have to lead as the commander-in-chief.
That's something we'll need to confirm.
Which side is the Green Pearl Battalion really on? Could Aspen have been hesitating all this time because they had already secured the Green Pearl forces as allies? It was a reasonable suspicion. No, it was something they had to suspect.
First, let's march.
The days of brief, dreamlike rest had passed. They had dealt with a few wolves. Now it was time to face the tiger lurking behind them. They prepared for battle, then began their advance. From checking the palisades and watchtowers around Green Pearl to entering deeper into the area, they couldn't afford to let their guard down. Then the Green Pearl Battalion commander appeared, fully armed, to greet Enkrid. The moment Enkrid saw the man's face contort, Kreis felt his ominous suspicions becoming a reality.
What kind of person is he?
At the adjutant's question, Graham adjusted his posture. A sharp pain shot up from his spine to his head.
Sinar.
He'd heard that the fairy had given Enkrid an ointment for his wounds. He was the Lord, wasn't he? Even if not, wasn't he at least a long-time comrade? Why was there not even a single root of medicinal herbs coming his way, let alone ointment? Pushing aside these trivial thoughts, Graham answered.
Who? I'm talking about Green Pearl.
One of them is clueless and stupid, while the other is more than ordinary. Even the questions are different.
Or maybe it's just relative.
It could be that the adjutant next to him is so dumb that the other one seems smarter by comparison. Not that he could afford to dismiss the clueless one. How far can a person go for another? That adjutant might not risk his life, but he'd put an arm on the line to save him, so he couldn't be dismissed.
Garrett Cairo.
Graham said the name of a man who had once been his superior but was now of equal rank. The name didn't exactly roll off his tongue. Garrett's battalion had originally been the 2nd Reserve Unit of the Border Guard, but thanks to their victory at the Battle of Green Pearl, they had become a new battalion stationed at the Green Pearl Plains.
He's an opportunist, willing to do anything for his own gain. There's a rumor that the reasons Aspen hasn't invaded is that Garrett's already defected.
Was this just a rumor only Enkrid had heard? Suddenly, Graham's ear itched, and he scratched it with his pinky.
Is someone bad-mouthing me somewhere?
He found himself suspicious of the adjutant he'd just kicked out of the room.
If Aspen pushes in, the city is in danger too, Commander.
Graham, the commander and lord, nodded.
Who doesn't know that?
What should he say about Garrett Cairo?
I don't think so. If I had to bet on it, I'd say he didn't.
Garrett was the exact opposite of the adjutant who was probably cursing him at this moment. Cunning and sly, yes, but not a traitor.
Why do you think Marcus left him there?
The battalion commander was a rather handsome man with dull blonde hair. He looked to be about middle-aged. He approached with long strides. Enkrid instinctively measured the distance.
2.5 steps.
If he wanted, he could close the gap with half a breath.
If judged as an enemy, you either cut him down or subdue him, grab his head first, and take control of his troops immediately.
This was what Kreis had said before leaving. Enkrid agreed with him. He subtly extended his left foot, completing his readiness. He could either thrust quickly, or if the enemy attacked first, he would deflect with the snake sword. His right arm had recovered enough that he could handle a parrying and striking technique. The right hand would deflect while the left hand struck. Even his mind was prepared. He kept all his options open as the battalion commander approached. Behind the commander, a group of archers, infantry, and guards were visible. They all seemed oddly tense. Garrett approached in large strides.
Marcus, you dirty bastard.
Then he shouted. There was a strange tone in his voice.
I missed you.
Garrett called out in a booming voice. A man meticulous in all things, opportunistic, and willing to do anything for his own gain. That was how people described Garrett, but that didn't seem quite right.
You're really more handsome than me, Nurat. What do you think?
He's very handsome.
Someone in the guard responded to Garrett's shout. It was a black-skinned woman. The battalion commander, Garrett, was a man who knew how to laugh, and he smiled very brightly. Then he said,
Now you're the most handsome man in the border guard.
Agreed.
Kreis mumbled from behind. He had been tense and worried, but now he let out a deflated remark. Enkrid also relaxed a little. If the enemy had calculated even this, then it was fair to say he was even more cunning than Jackson. Of course, Jackson would never admit to that if he heard it.
Let's go inside.
Garrett turned his body. What could it mean to show his back, even if he was hiding his true abilities? There was no betrayal from Garrett. Enkrid understood this from both reason and instinct.
Still, be careful,
Kreis said from behind. What if he planned to pull them in and trap them after the betrayal? For a betrayal, though.
He seems too careless.
Enkrid scratched his chin and followed Garrett. If Rem were here, he'd probably say what a straightforward fellow Garrett was. Rem, Auden, and Teresa had been left behind.
We also need someone to guard the rear. If things go south, we'll need to make a quick getaway.
That was Kreis' reasoning. Enkrid's reason was a bit different.
Unless you're planning to die in battle, why bother?
They were all injured. Resting was the best option when it was time to rest.
This would heal just by spitting on it.
Rem had protested, but despite his words, he had slathered the fairy's ointment on quite liberally. He had almost gotten into a fight with Jackson over coveting some of his herb collection.
Your body can't even handle the fairy's ointment. Why don't you go mix some mud and smear that on?
Jackson had teased him with his sharp tongue. At this point, breaking up fights between the two of them was something Enkrid could do in his sleep. After separating the two, Enkrid gave his order.
Stay behind.
It was a single phrase to cut off any insistence on coming along. He had even mustered the willpower to forcibly pull up a refusal. That showed just how much determination he had.
If you go and die, I'll personally take up the axe of vengeance.
Rem was the first to give up, and Auden merely chuckled, though it didn't seem like a laugh born of good cheer.
It's a problem that arose because this body of mine is too weak.
He tried to dig into Enkrid's conscience with self-deprecating words.
Yeah, so how about you train your body a bit more?
Enkrid playfully responded to the joke. His tongue had always been knight level, after all.
If you think you can win an argument with words, you'll get the tables turned on you. Don't you know that, you big oaf? I know it, so don't wag your tongue in front of me.
Rem gave some advice from the side. Naturally, Auden didn't listen. He simply started praying.
Did you see the arrogance of this pitiful and small commander, Father? Even if he ascends to heaven, don't be too hard on him.
It was a prayer that walked the fine line between blessing and cursing.
Thanks for the holy prayer.
With one final comment, Enkrid claimed a complete victory. Auden shook his head, laughing. Enkrid refrained from saying more, concerned that if he pushed further, Auden might actually challenge him to a fight, regardless of rank. If not for that, he would have had plenty more to say. Only Teresa didn't resist. In any case, she was too injured to put up a fight. Still, she'd said she felt satisfied after killing the wolf bishop. He didn't know the full story between the two of them, but it was clear their relationship wasn't a good one.
You did well.
He had praised her and left Rem and Auden behind with a show of force. So now he was with Esther the wizard, Kreis with his plan to run at the first sign of trouble, Ragnar walking silently with unknown thoughts, and Jackson, who, without a hint of humor, said he was glad to have left Rem behind.
Looks like someone poured oil on your face.
Sinar was with them too. The ferry company commander had no serious injuries, just a few scratches on her arm.
You look greasy.
Sinar muttered. Sinar approached and whispered again. It was directed at Garrett, though he didn't seem greasy but more on the handsome side, no matter how you looked at it.
Is that so?
Should they be thankful that Garrett didn't hear it? Even if he did, he seemed like the type to brush it off easily. He was hard to figure out.
Right now, you're my superior. This tone feels more comfortable.
Sinar had been insisting the whole way that Enkrid speak in a commanding tone.
Do you enjoy being ordered around and pressured by your superior?
Unable to hold back, he finally spoke up.
The pressure of my fiancé, how intriguing. I wonder how it would feel.
What kind of crazy talk is this? Even if it was a fairy-style joke, wasn't that crossing a line?
Just a joke.
Sinar still showed no trace of a smile. It wasn't as though there was a strange or bizarre reason for asking him to change his tone. In reality, it wasn't even forced.
It could be problematic if the chain of command breaks down.
That was the real reason.
It won't be a problem.
Sometimes it seemed like Sinar wasn't aware of the impact her appearance had. She always gave off an air of someone who deserved respect. From her gestures, her steps, and her tone, she constantly reminded you she was a fairy.
How old are you? If you're younger than me, I'll start speaking informally.
I couldn't care less about the chain of command.
Sinar turned away, still as expressionless as ever. Enkrid entered the camp Green Pearl had set up. What is this?
It's like a small village.
They had cut down large trees to build a stockade, and while most of the people were living in tents, some wooden houses were visible here and there. There were signs of construction that had been halted midway. It was probably because of the war and winter.
Just one more winter, and we could have built a proper village.
Garrett said this as they entered the largest tent in the center. He sat down at a wide table, with a few guards standing behind him, including the black-skinned woman from earlier. In the eastern part of the continent, black people were not uncommon, but in this region they were a rare sight.
Do you know how much I've been wanting to meet you?
Garrett suddenly said. Enkrid could only tilt his head in confusion.
That battle, I heard all about it. The Battle of Green Pearl, the soldiers after the war. What an exciting story. Tell me more about that.
Commander.
Garrett was seated, and Nurat stood behind him. The black-skinned woman, Nurat, bent forward slightly and called to the commander.
This isn't the time to talk about that, is it? No, it's not.
Aspen is right at our doorstep, Commander.
Another guard spoke up. He was a large man, and just by looking at him, you could tell he was the quiet type. With a square jaw and tightly clenched mouth, he projected a sense of gravity.
Yeah, that's just my personal business.
Garrett's mood shifted in an instant. His smile didn't change, nor did his expression. But something had changed. The atmosphere was different. The aura he projected twisted in a subtle yet noticeable way, like the way Christ reacted when something important was at stake, like how Odin confronted those who blasphemed against his god, like when Ragnar showed his passion for the sword, like when Rem went crazy, leaving his brain behind in a reckless frenzy.
I believe the best option is to retreat and abandon everything, don't you?
Enkrid could feel Kreis flinch at Garrett's words. He must love this. The mere mention of retreat always got him excited.
Why?
Enkrid asked.
Because I can't predict what the enemy will do.
Is that the only reason?
That's the reason!
Kreis cut in, thinking this was his moment to shine. Enkrid didn't stop him. In fact, he even nodded slightly, encouraging him to continue. Garrett's gaze shifted to Kreis as well.
A sharp-minded one, huh? What's your name?
It's Kreis!
In all my life, I've never asked a pretty boy's name first when two beautiful women were present. Go ahead, explain your reasoning.
Garrett's tone had a certain rhythm to it. It wasn't unpleasant to listen to. It was almost like a musical voice. Kreis had explained this once before, but he thought it was worth summarizing again.
Whether it's the Black Blade Bandits or the cultists when we fought up front, Aspen just watched.
Is that enough reason?
Sinar, who had been silently observing, spoke up. Though Enkrid was the official commander, it wouldn't be wrong to say Sinar was of a similar rank.
The fairy's voice sounds like an instrument.
Garrett muttered, as if his tongue would grow needles if he didn't spout nonsense. Sinar easily ignored him.
It is a reason. If everything was as it seemed, Aspen would have attacked us first. It's winter now. We've connected the supply lines to Green Pearl, and while it's not perfect, we can hold the line. Even without a fortress, defending isn't that difficult. How many watchtowers do we have? 8. Spread out, tightly packed.
It was hard to follow the conversation between Garrett and Kreis. Enkrid waited. They'd explain again eventually.
What about Aspen? Their supplies, their advance, their camp setup?
Kreis asked again. It wasn't really a question, more of a rhetorical emphasis. Supplies, marching, and camp construction, none of it was easy. There was a big difference between those who had prepared when the weather was warm and those who hadn't.
Time and the situation are on our side, yet Aspen just watched us.
Kreis thought privately that there must be a genius tactician on the enemy side. Otherwise, it didn't make sense.
They've prepared something.
Exactly. Honestly, I thought they'd just sit and watch, but no, they're not.
Are they coming? They're coming how fast? Slow, that's not good. No, it's not.
Nurat, who had been listening from behind, bent down toward her commander and said,
Nobody understands a word of this.
Kreis, speak in the common tongue.
Enkrid interrupted appropriately. Garrett gestured with his eyes, and Kreis began explaining. Aspen hadn't secured a favorable high ground, nor were they moving hastily. They were steadily pushing forward deliberately. There were 2 reasons for this.
First, they fully assessed our strength.
Kreis said first.
And second, they're confident they can win.
Garrett followed. Kreis and Garrett exchanged glances, then, without needing any cue, reached out and lightly clapped their hands together. The sound echoed inside the tent.
Commander.
Nurat bent forward again.
Oh, right, now's not the time to be celebrating, is it? No, it's not.
Garrett was an odd fellow, but he seemed sharp. It didn't appear that he'd betrayed them either. Enkrid refrained from smacking the back of Kreis's head.
So if we retreat, if we just run?
The city falls, we become war criminals and are dragged into a royal court. So, running is the answer, but not really.
Enkrid had asked Kreis, but it was Garrett who answered. When the 2 raised their hands to high-five again, Enkrid pushed down on Kreis's head. Then he said,
Then we need to figure out how to win.
Thinking wasn't his strong suit. That was Kreis's job.
That's not something you can just come up with on the spot. First, we need to consider the surrounding terrain.
Nurat.
At Garrett's command, a map was brought out. It was a rough military map showing the general topography.
Any issues with our supply lines?
None at all. To interfere with our supply, they'd have to break through 4 narrow watchtowers.
As Kreis and Garrett dove back into their private discussion, Enkrid stepped back entirely. He observed for a while, but he'd be lucky to understand even half of what they were saying. Sinar had already slipped outside at some point. Enkrid stepped out of the tent as well, craving the fresh mountain air. Inside, the fire in the brazier had filled the tent with an uncomfortable, stuffy heat. Outside, he saw Ragna, who had already been standing there. Ragna stared blankly at Enkrid. It seemed like he had something to say. When Enkrid approached, Ragna tilted his head slightly, looking beyond the wooden palisade at the sky, and asked,
Why do you want to become a knight?
It was an abrupt question, but also an enjoyable one. He didn't ask,
Do you really want to become a knight?
But rather,
Why do you want to become a knight?
The meaning embedded in the question was entirely different. Ragna stood alone outside, reflecting on the past.
1,000 times. Don't even think about coming back in until you're done.
1,000 downward strikes. It didn't seem hard, however. Ragna was curious.
Why do I have to swing a sword?
His arms hurt. His body ached. It wasn't enjoyable. Was it ever enjoyable when he first picked up the sword? He didn't know at all, and he couldn't even remember.
Why? Are you asking why? If you were born into the House of Zaun, it's simply what you're supposed to do.
They said it was natural. But could that be a reason? The same tasks were repeated over and over. Why?
Uphold the honor of the House of Zaun.
Why should I?
Become a knight.
Why should I become a knight?
Kill.
Why should I kill? Since childhood, Ragna had been lost, unable to find his path. For him, finding a path was the hardest thing. Why was it so hard? Because he didn't know the right path. Because there was no known road for him to follow. Ragna had no destination, and that's why he was always curious. How could a person like Enkrid be like that? Shouldn't everyone at least once doubt the road they are walking? Wonder if the path they're on is the right one, whether it's a valid reason for living, or whether it's a suitable purpose for their life. Ragna had never seen any sign of confusion in Enkrid's eyes, never seen him lose his sense of direction. No matter who it is, people sometimes falter. But not Enkrid, he was always certain. And so Ragnar wanted to ask him, "Why do you want to be a knight?" Enkrid looked at Ragnar and scratched his chin out of habit. The answer was obvious, but whether it was the answer Ragnar wanted, that he wasn't sure.
It's actually easier to deal with that crazy Rem.
Rem was flexible in his thinking. He might seem mad, but his mind was resilient. Though it might bend, it would never break. Audin was strong. His mental fortitude was unshakable, like refined steel.
At first he seemed fragile.
Even now, he wavers sometimes, but it's the kind of wavering that comes from a refined ironclad core. There was a reassuring strength that made Enkrid certain Audin wouldn't crumble. Jackson was indifferent. His coldness made him detached, rarely showing any passion for anything. But even in that coldness, there was sometimes a heat so intense that just looking at it might burn you. That was how Enkrid saw the inner nature of his fellow squad members. So what about Ragnar?
He cuts through anything, yet it's a blade that could easily break.
He was unstable and precarious. He was the man most deserving of the word talented, but also the man who wielded his talent in the most dangerous way. Enkrid didn't mince his words. He didn't struggle to find the right ones either.
Let your heart decide.
He just thumped his chest as he spoke. Ragnar stopped at those words. He held his breath for a long time, as if he'd forgotten how to exhale. Watching quietly, Enkrid saw Ragnar eventually let out a deep breath and speak.
That's the reason you want to be a knight?
As a child, it had been a dream. As an adult, it had been a burning goal. At one point, it had been a fleeting obsession. Now it was the road he had walked and the one he would continue to walk. A knight of the end, bringing peace to the war, a hero from a bard's song. That had been the dream. If he had to put it into words, that would be the reason. But if he delved deeper into himself, it was simply because his heart told him to do it. Saving a child, protecting the weak, keeping his vows. It was all the same. There couldn't be just one reason why someone would want to become a knight, and so that was the answer.
Is my why that important?
Ragnar responded to the question with another question, once again, falling into deep thought. Although his eyes were fixed on Enkrid, his mind was elsewhere. Enkrid noticed this instinctively. Rem, Audin, Jackson, and Ragnar were all the same. They looked at him, seeking answers. They were searching for something. Even Esther was similar. If he hadn't been this perceptive, he wouldn't have made it as a squad leader, let alone avoided becoming a meal for crows in some corner of the battlefield.
I'll head in first.
A pleasant question deserves a pleasant answer, Enkrid thought. As he was about to head back in, a paranoid thought crossed his mind. If he left Kreis alone, would he and Garrett hatch a plan to run away together? Just then, Ragnar's voice stopped him.
When this fight is over, let's have a duel.
As much as you want.
I'll wager more than half of my life.
That was his way of saying he wanted a serious fight.
As much as you want.
Enkrid repeated, giving the same answer before stepping back into the tent. Left alone, Ragnar quietly felt the explosion and eruption building within him. It was like a volcano about to blow. A boiling sensation rising from his lower abdomen surged up and struck his heart.
Why am I alive?
When his question of why he swung his sword touched on the reason for his existence, Ragnar lost his drive. He became lazy. He became a lost sheep. Had he not met a shepherd, he would have lived that way forever.
Let's have that duel.
Ragnar spoke into the empty air. There was no answer. The person he was speaking to had already gone into the tent. Ragnar focused on the sound within himself. It was the voice of his heart, a cry from his inner world.
Hey, you finally hearing me now?
He heard it. The outcry he had ignored until now was clear and unmistakable. At some point, facing most opponents had stopped being enjoyable.
It's just killing.
It wasn't about testing himself with the sword anymore. It had become a routine of killing people according to a set path. It was labor, not a contest, but that didn't mean he felt any guilt about killing. If one takes up a weapon, shouldn't they always be prepared to die? His opponent had picked up a sword too, and thus had to be prepared for the consequences. Ragnar had long believed that he would die someday, wandering aimlessly and perishing in some unknown field. But life doesn't always go the way you expect.
You idiot, do you get it now?
Hearing this rebuke from within, Ragnar laughed. A smile crept onto his face.
Ah, yeah, I get it.
He even spoke to himself out loud. Through his inner self, Ragnar faced his desires. He confirmed his yearning. He had found his path. He wanted to fight an opponent who could make his heart race.
I want to fight someone who will push me to my limits.
By then, Sinar, who had quietly left the tent earlier, had overheard the entire conversation from the side. Fairy hearing was almost like magic, ignoring distance altogether. From her perspective, Ragna's question seemed odd, and Enkrid's answer was equally strange, and now, Ragna muttering to himself appeared even more peculiar. It was all so strange. Yet she couldn't help but feel a certain joy as she listened to their conversation. Just hearing it made her feel fresh and warm inside. Without realizing it, Sinner smiled. A smile she hadn't felt in a very long time. It was a smile she would never show anyone else if they were watching. He examined the map and analyzed the terrain. Kreis mentally sorted through the dozens of possible scenarios that could unfold, focusing on the most probable one.
It's still not enough.
They lacked both the strength and information about the enemy.
How do we win? No, just holding them off will be a victory.
As long as the palisade doesn't fall, that's good enough. So the answer is defense. Not an attack, but defense.
No, wait, that's not it. If we just defend, we'll lose. Unless Aspen is a gathering of fools, which they aren't.
If they were the type to make foolish moves, they would have attacked from behind in the first place. Kreis's thoughts followed a trail, one leading to another, until they got tangled.
That's why this won't work. Well, defense is our best option.
Battalion Commander Garrett said this. Nurat, his bodyguard, muttered something from behind. Kreis didn't hear it. He was mentally exhausted. This was already the umpteenth battle. It would be easy to run away.
Why do we even have to defend the city?
Why can't we just flee? The most important thing in the world is your own life. Second is Krona. Third, maybe, is Enkrid. So really, it's all because of the commander.
Ugh, I don't care anymore.
Kreis threw in the towel. The strategy meeting had started out of nowhere. They had been talking for 3 or 4 hours already, sweat dripping down their faces. When he glanced back, Enkrid had somehow returned. Though it looked like he had gone out, he was back and listening to the discussion.
The best option is defense, holding out until winter passes. But do you think Aspen is just slowly creeping up without realizing that?
Garrett asked.
Yes, that's exactly why I judge that their slow advance is the problem.
Kreis replied. It was a process of finding the answer by repeating the same words. The first thing Kreis and Garrett said when they met was this.
What's their speed?
Slow.
That's not good.
Definitely not.
That was the exchange. Garrett said they were slow, and Kreis said it was bad. But why was it bad? Even though the defensive advantages were clear, the fact that they were advancing so slowly meant they had something up their sleeves. Enkrid, who had been quietly observing, asked,
What's the worst-case scenario?
A dragon spewing fire right above our heads.
Kreis answered without missing a beat.
A dragon? That's absurd. That's impossible.
Nurat interjected. Garrett didn't stop him. Kreis continued.
There's also the chance of knight-level forces suddenly appearing.
We've done our best to track any knight-level movements.
Garrett responded.
Judging by the speed of their advance, they'll arrive in 4 or 5 days at most. In the meantime, we'll have to organize scouting parties and hold our ground.
Enkrid also looked at the map. He studied the terrain and quickly committed it to memory. He had always had a good memory, even as a child. Plus, with his experience as a pathfinder, memorizing a few routes was no big deal.
What do we need most right now?
Variables!
An answer came immediately. If you don't know what's inside a box, just shake it. Kreis thought the same, but what exactly was the variable here? Does it mean sacrificing troops just to see how the enemy reacts? That would be plain foolishness. Wouldn't it so? What should they do? Strike their supply lines. That won't work either. Their preparations were thorough, which was why they were advancing so slowly. They were practically poking, prodding, and picking up every little thing, even the pebbles on the ground, as they marched. There's an old saying on the continent, when crossing a stone bridge, it doesn't work. Turn around. It means if something feels off, don't do it, even if it takes longer. Thoroughness is more important than speed. That's exactly what the enemy was doing. So the best option for now was to hold their ground, and the next was to shake things up.
Sometimes by gauging their response, you can discern their intent,
Kreis said.
It's a good method, but it's not easy, is it?
Garrett said from the other side, folding his arms. Nura, standing beside him, added,
They're moving very slowly, showing no gaps at all. We've already sent a ranger unit to hit their supply lines, but it was useless. Not a single one made it back alive.
Enkrid nodded. What could he do that would be any different?
We should rest and prepare.
That was the decision. Garrett nodded in agreement.
Once this battle is over, could you tell me some stories?
Garrett asked as he approached. What kind of person is he? He wasn't ordinary, that was for sure. He was the one who set up the stronghold at Green Pearl and organized the army the moment Aspen appeared. His level of preparation was solid, almost flawless.
What kind of stories?
Stories about your battles, the times you were in that crazy squad, the moment you became a company commander and all the battles you fought. Everything.
Garrett's eyes sparkled with excitement. He seemed eager, as though he was looking forward to it. Enkrid scratched his chin. There would be a lot to do after the battle ended, but first they had to survive. Enkrid also started thinking. If Aspen was playing their hand like this, what could be done to give their commander a real headache?
Sure, later,
he replied, absent-mindedly, his thoughts wandering. Garrett seemed satisfied with that and nodded. Was it fortunate that Garrett wasn't a traitor? In Enkrid's mind, the easiest path for Garrett would have been defection. Wouldn't it have been much easier if he had sided with Aspen and turned his blade on them? Enkrid didn't hide his curiosity and asked directly.
If fleeing and deserting would lead to being labeled a war criminal at best, why didn't you defect? I'm sure Aspen offered.
It was a sensitive question, but Garrett didn't mind.
Romance.
Sorry.
Romance is here.
What could he mean by romance? Garrett's dream was to be a poet. He was quite skilled with rhythm and words. For someone like him, everything that happened in the border guard was material. It was a story. It was romance. It was his dream, especially Enkrid, who seemed like the main character of a play. Garrett loved heroes. Even if Enkrid did nothing, Garrett would still like him. The more he learned about Enkrid, the more absurd and miraculous his accomplishments seemed.
Living like this and dying would be so much more fun,
Garrett said, laughing. In a way, he was as mad as Enkrid. To him, it was as if getting inspiration for a romantic poem today meant it didn't matter if he died tomorrow. Enkrid didn't fully understand him, but he could sense that this man wouldn't betray them. If he had drawn the sword of betrayal, he wouldn't be standing here at all.
You're kind of like the commander,
Kreis said suddenly.
How so?
You know, up here.
Kreis replied, tapping his own head with his index finger. The gesture was oddly irritating, so Enkrid gave him a jab to the head with his elbow.
Ow!
Kreis clutched his head and rolled on the ground. Nurat stepped in to help him up, asking if he was all right.
I'm fine. You're Nurat, right? How about we chat over a cup of tea?
Even in a situation like this, Kreis is still flirting with women. Yeah, that's just who Kreis is. At least he wasn't panicking or wandering in confusion, so it was actually better. Whether he had half given up or genuinely thought they had a chance, Enkrid couldn't tell. Enkrid stepped out of the tent, intending to take a look at the stronghold that Garrett had set up. As he wandered around the camp, he noticed a group of soldiers gathered together. They had a fire going and were grilling something, and the smell was absolutely mouth-watering. As he got closer, he saw a large chunk of meat skewered on a long stick. On one side, they were seasoning it, while on the other side, they were grilling it. The teamwork in their process was impressive.
Mind if I sit with you?
Enkrid said, sliding into the group.
Who's this? Haven't seen you before.
Just joined today.
Most of the soldiers didn't recognize Enkrid's face. This was a supply battalion, and everyone was busy with familiar tasks. Garrett's unit had always been like this. His specialty was logistics, not combat.
Here, have one.
A female soldier was among them, and she openly stared at Enkrid's face. It was natural for her to be friendly, after all. Enkrid's face often served as its own kind of weapon.
Stop staring or you'll wear him out.
A soldier teased her who was applying seasoning.
Hey, it's my eyes. Let me enjoy the view. I've been rotting away looking at you guys every day.
Yeah, right.
Their banter showed how close they were. Despite their teasing, their hands worked in perfect sync, a clear sign of good camaraderie. Enkrid squeezed his way into the group. Even though they had laid down thick blankets on the ground, the cold still seeped through. Soon he bit into the grilled meat. He thought it was snake meat at first, but the moment he chewed, it melted in his mouth.
What is this?
He asked, and the soldier grilling the meat grinned as he replied.
It's good for men.
Enkrid judged that this crew was a step above Martai's bread-baking battalion. It tasted that good. And another thing became clear. Garrett managed his unit exceptionally well.
He may not specialize in combat, but
The soldiers were at ease, showing signs of excellent management. Enkrid grabbed a few more pieces of meat and ate them.
You sure can eat.
The female soldier remarked. Enkrid just nodded, too busy stuffing his face with more meat. When asked about the identity of the meat that melted in his mouth,
It's an eel.
"Not a snake, but a long-bodied freshwater fish," she said. The female soldier spoke as she roughly peeled the skin with a small knife. Everyone worked quickly, their hands moving in sync.
When we return to the city, I'm thinking of transporting fish from the river to sell here. What do you think?
The soldier brushing seasoning on the fish asked. Enkrid silently gave a thumbs up. As he did, he imagined the trade route between the river and this place. If they paved the road well, it would only take 2 days by carriage. If they got a spell object that emitted cold air, freshness wouldn't be an issue, even in midsummer. Artifacts were ancient relics, whereas spell objects were magical tools made and sold by guilds of wizards. Among them were tools that maintained a gentle coolness. Using that, people in large cities even ate shaved ice in the middle of summer. Of course, such things were ridiculously expensive and rare in remote places like the border guard, but with future trade, who knew? They already had things like silk being brought in. If it weren't for the war, trade might have expanded even more, but that couldn't be helped.
this flavor is new to me.
Enkrid spoke with sincerity. Although seasoning stained the corners of his mouth, the emotion behind his words didn't wane. In fact, it only grew stronger. The soldier who had been seasoning the grilled eel smiled slyly. While not particularly pleasant-looking, there was genuine warmth in his smile. Pure joy was evident. It seemed like the act of someone eating his cooking was itself a pleasure.
Do you think it'll sell well?
For sure. Even if it's just words, it's nice to hear. Hey, when that happens, take me with you, all right?
Another soldier grilling eel chimed in. His face was smudged with soot, but it looked natural on him. Neither of them seemed very old.
Helma, is it done?
A few soldiers approached, shouting. The female soldier who had been staring at Enkrid was named Helma.
Yeah, did you catch anything?
Helma replied without even turning around. From the conversation, it seemed they had cleared a path to the Penhinil River, and whenever they were bored, they'd go catch something from there. The approaching soldier dropped a thick leather pouch on the ground. In the cold air, thin shards of ice fell from the leather pouch, which had a slight frost on it.
What is it?
Crawfish.
When they opened the pouch, a crustacean with pincers emerged. The soldier making the seasoning licked his lips and said,
"Just grilling those makes them taste amazing."
Enkrid mingled with the soldiers, eating and enjoying their company as if he had always been one of them.
Care for a drink?
Of course.
Helma offered him some liquor. It was a whiskey with a musty smell.
Not great, but not bad either, right?
It was perfect for warming up in the cold weather. The talented cook among the soldiers grilled the crawfish, removed the heads, and smeared the seasoning into the meat like a marinade.
You'll go crazy eating it like this.
He tried it. He almost did go crazy. There was no fishy smell, only an overwhelming savory flavor. A pleasant sweetness wrapped around his tongue and struck his brain.
You should definitely open a restaurant.
Enkrid recommended it twice. Next up was the trout. The guts had already been cleaned out by the river, so all they had to do was grill it. With a sprinkle of salt and pepper, it was another delicacy.
By the way, where are you from?
It wasn't Helma, but another female soldier who asked. Female soldiers weren't uncommon in the unit, which was to be expected. In Norillia, female enlistment was highly encouraged. Born the daughter of a serf? If you want to change your life, join the military. It was a female enlistment system. Norillia's third military policy, following the soldier ranking system and mercenary enlistment system. It worked so well that female soldiers were now a common sight.
Reinforcements.
From the border guard?
Yeah.
So, how about it? Is your commander really as handsome as the rumors say? Is he better looking than you? Huh?
Currently, Enkrid had a beard. To be precise, he hadn't had the time to shave, so he'd let it grow. While it could make him look a bit unkempt, it didn't completely hide his natural looks. No wonder Helma kept glancing at him.
No, I'm better.
Enkrid quipped jokingly. A few of the soldiers couldn't hold back their laughter at his words. Some of them cast envious glances. Others seemed to enjoy Enkrid's easygoing attitude.
Don't get too full of yourself.
Some soldiers said, half in jest, their words tinged with a mix of envy and jealousy.
Yeah, I won't.
Enkrid responded calmly. What was the point of arguing? If it had been Rem, he would have probably smashed their heads first, but Enkrid wasn't Rem. After eating and drinking with the soldiers, Enkrid returned to the assigned barracks, where Esther was sitting quietly, waiting for him. There were rumors that some of the soldiers had fallen for her the moment they saw her. With her silky black hair flowing down and wrapped in thick black fur, the wizard's appearance, along with Sinar, was enough to captivate the attention of the surrounding soldiers. Perhaps that's why she didn't go outside. But that wasn't the reason. Esther wasn't particularly interested in those around her to begin with. The wizard looked at Enkrid and spoke. Her flat tone was the epitome of indifference.
I need to go somewhere.
All right.
Enkrid had no reason to stop her, and just like that, Esther left without a word. The next morning, Kreis, with bloodshot eyes, asked,
Don't you think her spells or magic could have been useful?
What he was really asking was, why did you let Esther go? If she's in her human form, wouldn't that help? Enkrid had thought the same thing.
No, it won't.
Why not?
If she could have helped, she would have stepped in already.
Kreis would have normally realized this himself. Esther had been in her human form for a long time now. If she could have done anything with her magic, she would have done it already. But she hadn't. That meant there was a reason. Enkrid knew this, which was why he let her go. He figured she had something to do. He didn't think it was urgently necessary right now. Unless she wanted to, forcing her might have done more harm than good. It wasn't a thought, but more of a feeling. Enkrid simply followed his instinct, as he always did.
Why are you only smart at times like this?
Kreis grumbled. It was his way of admitting Enkrid was right. Afterward, Enkrid went about his usual routine of warming up and starting his training. He practiced the isolation technique, gradually tightening and stretching each muscle in a punishing process, before moving on to swinging his sword. He had killed Lycanos recently and retrieved his sword. Now 2 swords hung at his left waist.
Isn't that uncomfortable?
Sinar, who had come over to watch from the morning, asked,
I've gotten used to it, and it's actually lighter than I thought.
Really? Want a light spar?
Not a bad idea.
Sinar's leaf blade was flexible, fluid, and fast. She leapt with light, springy steps, striking with her sword. Even though the attacks were light, they were tricky to parry.
Are you preparing against my techniques? Sharp as always, my fiancé.
By the time Enkrid deflected the blow, she had already struck and retreated. Enkrid shifted his sword technique, middle sword technique, heavy swings, powerful strikes, and now, faster. It wasn't quite like Ragnar's display of swinging the sword 5 times in one step, but it was 2 strikes per step, a result of observing, studying, and mimicking.
Impressive.
Sinar admired her leaf blade also changed. From quick cutting strikes, it shifted to the fluid sword technique parrying. Her style was ever-changing. The sword of the fairies was both sharp and gentle. Enkrid noted it in his mind. Later, when he reviewed and reflected on it, he would surely learn something. There would be something to gain. Though his right arm wasn't fully healed yet, it wasn't a life-or-death duel. Neither of them was being too serious. After a while, after sparring with their swords, Sinar wiped the sweat from her forehead and asked,
Does that sword have a name? Does it have a name?
He held the sword that had belonged to Lycanos in his left hand. Enkrid's eyes traced the sword from the hilt, along the spine, all the way to the tip of the blade. The sword had a shape similar to an awl, extending from the hilt to the very tip of the blade. The blade itself was silver, and the hilt was wrapped in something rough, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Even without adding extra leather, the grip felt perfect in his palm, giving the sense that it had been custom-made for precise handling of a light sword. Clearly, this wasn't an ordinary weapon. Additionally, there were symbols or runes carved near the base of the hilt, which suggested it was more than just a simple sword. Sinar, without much hesitation, quietly continued explaining.
It's a sword made by the fairies. Its name is Ember.
Is it famous?
In its own way.
Enkrid had already suspected it was no ordinary blade. It was strong yet light. That meant it wasn't made of typical steel. Ember was a sword forged by a renowned fairy craftsman. There are 2 types of fairy swords, Nidil and Needle. This one was a needle, and had been given a name. Naming a weapon meant the craftsman had great confidence in their work. He had heard that this sword was lost 10 years ago, and now it had resurfaced here. A light, sturdy sword, perfect for thrusting. Among the needle swords, this was one of the finest.
How many swords were lost back then?
The craftsman who forged Ember had made a few other swords, but they were all lost due to certain events. Certain events was a polite way of saying they were lost due to some foolish bloodline squabbles.
Endurance, destruction, Ember.
There were a few others, though the names didn't all come to mind. They were probably well documented in the fairy city, along with records of the despicable human thieves involved. The swords were lost when a fairy swordsman was killed in an ambush. They were given to those who neither had the skill nor the right to wield them, and thus they were lost. That should never have happened, but it did.
A worthy person should hold them.
So, for Sinar, it made perfect sense for Enkrid to carry Ember. In her eyes, he was qualified.
Since it's a famous sword, isn't there some obligation to return it, or something like that? Unless they look at it closely, even Fairy wouldn't recognize it. The word Ember is written in Fairy script right below the guard. As long as you keep that hidden, you'll be fine.
Sinar turned away as she finished speaking. Enkrid understood her point clearly.
In other words, keep it hidden.
He decided to do just that. He had found a good sword and there was no need to return it. Enkrid had a bit of a thing for swords, after all. After sweating it out with Sinar in their sparring match, he was hungry again. Enkrid washed up and wandered around the inner camp, which had a village-like atmosphere. There wasn't a forge, but everywhere people were roasting something or sewing extra layers onto clothing. Everyone seemed quite busy. This time, Enkrid brought along Ragna and Dunbachel as well, since they had been watching the sparring with nothing better to do.
You want to come along?
Sure.
I could tell you ate something good yesterday. The smell was all over you.
Dunbachel was a beast woman with a highly developed sense of smell. She was sensitive to aromas and had once mentioned that she had a hobby of enjoying good food.
Follow me.
Enkrid found a spot and casually started eating various things again. He didn't specifically explain who he was, but Dunbachel, observing how Enkrid interacted with the soldiers, quickly made up a story that he was also part of the reinforcements.
Who made this? It's fantastic.
I did.
A young soldier answered.
Well done, kid.
Dunbachel said absent-mindedly, ruffling the soldier's hair. The young soldier blushed slightly. Some soldiers directed questions toward Ragna, but he remained silent. He looked like he was either deep in thought or searching for something. The soldiers kept a bit of distance from Ragna.
These guys look a bit off, don't they?
One of the soldiers had hit the nail on the head, but no one paid much attention. Enkrid heard it but understood. He was fine, but his companions always seemed a bit lacking.
Hey, didn't I tell you to not bring weird friends here?
One soldier said irritably, but Enkrid just brushed it off.
Yeah, I'll be careful.
This guy just talks. Hey, knock it off. No, seriously, this guy. I said stop. Wow, damn. Don't act like an idiot.
While it was annoying to just hear talk without action, no one was about to cause trouble. The other soldiers intervened, calming down the agitated ones.
Watch yourself,
one muttered. Enkrid watched this unfold, thinking that discipline was well maintained here. It wasn't like there was a huge issue, but someone could have easily tried to start something. If they had, Enkrid might have had to, unfortunately, step in like Rem and handle the soldier for a bit. He clicked his tongue and Helma gave him a strange look. Enkrid ignored it and continued eating and chatting. The grilled trout, crawfish, and seasoned eel even made Ragnar turn his head toward the soldier who had prepared them. The way his eyes sparkled was quite amusing. Considering he was usually picky about food, the fact that this meal caught his interest meant it was indeed impressive.
This seasoning is a family secret, you know.
The soldier's seasoning recipe was worthy of praise. He glanced at Dunbachel, who had rather peculiar tastes. Enkrid took it easy, doing minimal training while eating, drinking, and resting. His body still hadn't fully recovered. While the rear soldiers were busy making things and preparing food, the atmosphere was different at the front of the camp, where a few other soldiers were stationed. Garrett's battalion had fewer combat-ready soldiers, but those who stood out the most were from this group. They were part of the Green Pearl Rangers, the Plains Scouts.
Heading out on a scouting mission.
Who are you? What unit are you with?
It was clear they were allies, but scouting missions were inherently dangerous. Seeing an unfamiliar face, the soldiers immediately sent cautious glances his way.
I'm with the reinforcements.
Enkrid showed his epaulette. It had the emblem of the border guard's high watchtower.
Doesn't seem like it's your concern.
One of the soldiers said. Judging by Norilia's ranking system, he was at least an elite soldier. He was short, but his body looked quick and agile. Enkrid observed the soldier's nimble physique, his light armor, and where his center of gravity usually leaned.
He focuses on footwork and relies on thrusts.
The stiletto dangling at his waist was noticeable. This was the conclusion Enkrid came to by using what he'd learned from the isolation technique and from Auden's teachings. He could assess how well trained someone was by just looking at them.
Here, eat this.
Enkrid pulled out some seasoned jerky from his pouch and tossed it to him. The elite soldier caught it, but the suspicion didn't leave his eyes as he asked,
"What's this?"
Just try it. It's good.
The soldier took a small bite, then tore a larger strip of the jerky.
Got any bread? Try dipping it in this.
Enkrid said, handing some marmalade to the soldier next to him. It was a specialty of the border guard. If they didn't like it, something was wrong with their taste buds. While the unit wasn't exactly suffering from a shortage of supplies, they weren't abundant either. Guarding a small area meant they couldn't easily go out hunting, and they occasionally had to deal with magical beasts that caused trouble nearby. Aside from the archers stationed at the watchtower, the main force of this unit was made up of rangers. They didn't even have a cavalry unit.
This is pretty good,
one of the scouts muttered. The elite soldier, who seemed to be the leader of the rangers, snorted.
I don't know what you're trying to pull, but are you at least reporting to your superior?
No, he hadn't, but he could do that now. Enkrid reported to his superior, which was of course himself. After receiving his internal approval, he replied,
I'm just giving you food because you've been working hard. Just eat it.
Weird guy.
Enkrid continued to wander around the camp, focusing on eating and resting. There was a lot to learn from looking around. Watchtowers were clustered in a small area. Because the defensive zone was small, it would be easy to defend. However, it also meant they were more vulnerable to flanking attacks, but some risks had to be taken. On the fourth afternoon after Enkrid's arrival, just as the sun was setting, a messenger came rushing into the camp. Everyone's eyes turned toward him.
The enemy is at our doorstep.
The messenger's words spread quickly from the command tent to the rest of the camp.